Interesting. There appears to be a large orange hedge moving towards us.
That's not a hedge, Consul. That's the Scots.
Welcome to episode 27 of the Blackadder podcast, where we are more hedge-like than interesting.
Okay, fair enough. We're not both bright orange.
No.
Just one of us.
Correct. How are you?
I'm not too bad, Gerry. How are you this week?
I'm okay.
That's good.
It's better than the alternative. Yes. Not being okay.
How are you enjoying 2018 so far?
Wonderful. Hoverboards are out.
Can you believe it?
Stop it. Okay, so the final ever episode of Blackadder. What are your thoughts?
Final ever? You don't think they'll bring it back?
No. And do you know what? After watching this, I hope they don't. I think like a lot of Blackadder fans, you sort of fantasize about how they could bring it back and that they should bring it back.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure.
No, I mean, I think we'll get into some of the details, but we've talked about it in almost every series, the behind-the-scenes angst that makes it more and more unlikely each time that they'll do it again.
Yeah. But I don't even mean that. I don't even think...
The quality of the episode?
I think, yeah, this episode was okay, but I think too much time had passed and it didn't have the organic, natural comedy, and it felt like what it was.
Painted by numbers almost. It's like,
yes.
What are the key components of Blackadder? Let's put one in here, one in there.
Precisely.
Well, people like the Queen, we'll have her.
Yeah, and it was fine for what it was.
You know, to a certain extent, they'd already done a lot of this in the Christmas Carol.
Yes.
So it was really just going over that old ground, which was going over old ground at the time.
Yeah. I mean, I think the last episode of Blackadder Goes Forth would have been a fantastic point to stop. Leave that as the last memory in people's minds.
I think it maybe will be, though.
Hopefully. Because I don't think a lot of people will have actually seen this episode. Must admit myself, this is probably the second time I've watched it and I don't really have any desire to watch it again.
No, it wasn't anything particular. I mean, it was fine.
It was fine. Yeah, that's
a better way to spend half an hour than watching some other shows, but
yeah. Meh. Okay, well, we can discuss some of the things that made it fine and made it only fine.
Okay.
As we progress. So, without further ado, do you have a summary?
I do.
Crack on.
In Back and Forth, we join the latest member of the Blackadder dynasty as he travels through history in a Baldric-crafted time machine. With improvised controls and an imprecise method, can the duo make their way back to the 21st century, or will they be doomed to wander through Britain's past for the rest of their lives?
Thank you, Iain. Dynasty, you say? I'm sure we've discussed this before. I go for Dynasty.
Well, I've been getting abuse for pronunciation for weeks now, so...
We won't get into that.
No.
Well, I should say not from not via the podcast.
No, that's just at work.
Yeah.
It's the way I speak. It's racist, I say.
Oh, I'm sure that everyone outside of Scotland is listening to this anyway and thinking that, yeah, you're both atrocious.
Probably. We've had comments of that type.
Yeah. An enjoyable podcast if you can decipher it.
Outrageous.
Yeah.
Bigotry, that's what it is. Xenophobia and bigotry. Anyway.
No, but presuming that person was able to decipher it.
And if they weren't, then they won't know what we've just said, so it won't matter.
Ruin you. Anyway.
The opening credits, presented by Blackadder Films in association with Baldric Dodgy Catering Company. That's a nice little throwback to a couple of episodes past.
Sure.
There's also a note that this is the final episode in the saga of the Blackadder family, who have forever been at the very centre of British history and society, and that's probably fair.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's what the show tried to set out to do at the beginning.
Yes, definitely.
Titles of a scroll and photographs are shown with Blackadder present at significant events in history, very much like Forrest Gump.
Yes, I like the way he showed up on the Bayeux Tapestry.
And we begin the episode at Blackadder Mansions.
Yes, it's London, I presume.
Mm-hmm.
December 31st, 1999.
The camera sweeps through the gate of this large house into the dining room, where a dinner party is taking place, obviously to celebrate the new millennium.
Absolutely.
And we have modern day versions of all the familiar faces, with the Blackadders, Melchits, Darlings, Elizabeths.
George is there as well.
Yet, toasting peace and understanding.
Sure.
Well, most of them are. Blackadder takes a contrary view.
Yeah, he reflects on man's long history of death and torture.
He then apologises for the food.
As you would. I think Darling is particularly unhappy with what he's been served.
Why is the food not great?
Baldric cooked it.
Why did he cook it?
He's the cook.
Why is he the cook?
The regular cook has been invited to Delia Smith's for an event.
What sort of event?
Some kind of orgy, I believe.
Some kind. A food orgy.
Yes.
Obviously.
Of the best kind.
And, yeah, so he was replaced by Baldric, the man who cleans the septic tank. At this point, Blackadder calls for him.
He does. Do you like Baldric's outfit?
No, it made my stomach churn. It was up there with the Christmas Carol when he was in his bondage gear.
Yes, it was a little bit creepy then as well.
Yeah.
Did you like the rear view better than the front view?
Nope, I didn't like any view whatsoever.
I think it is Darling who says the food looks like someone's coughed up Benylin over an avocado.
Yeah.
Baldric remarks that it's funny he should say that. At this point, Blackadder has an announcement.
What's that?
Well, he tells Darling that he's built a time machine.
As you do.
Yeah.
And of course everyone believes him.
Well, Melchit's flabbergasted. But they decide that they're going to take him at his word, I think, because they're going to go and see what this machine is.
So they head down to the workshop, and Blackadder reveals what looks to be a massive carriage clock.
It does. He says it's been built to plans designed by Da Vinci himself, and that it's taken a year to build.
They're impressed, but obviously and correctly assume that it is a practical joke.
Well, glazed my nipples and called me Rita. It can't be real, Blackadder. It's a practical joke, surely.
Certainly not. When was the last time I played a practical joke?
Well, there was the time you said you were dying of kidney failure, and I donated one of my kidneys to save your life, and then you said it was an April Fool, and we had to throw my kidney away.
Well, yes, there has been the odd hilarious practical joke, but not this time. This is a working time machine. And to prove it, I suggest a wager. I will bet you each £10,000 that I can travel through time and bring back any items of historical interest which you choose to nominate. Darling?
Well, yes, all right. Yes, if you can travel through time, I'll pay up. So long as you bring back with you a genuine Roman centurion's helmet.
Very well. A Roman centurion's helmet.
My assumption was that these characters are all sitting in the House of Lords, with the exception of Baldric. So you've got the clergyman, which is a uniquely British anachronism, where you've got members of the clergy who sit in the House of Lords, and you've got Lord Blackadder. We assume that Hugh Laurie's character is of the elite, and therefore presumably also Miranda Richardson's.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough.
They certainly have a lot of money to throw around on simple wagers.
We see, however, that things are not what they appear to be.
Well, they're exactly as they appear to be. It's a practical joke.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
As soon as the announcement is made by Blackadder that he is to bring back a centurion's helmet, we get a shot of a microphone picking up his voice and Baldric scrabbling around some historical artefacts looking for something that resembles a centurion's helmet.
Yeah, and we hear Elizabeth, and she wants Wellingtons.
Yes, from Waterloo. I think she's maybe a bit ambitious there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he wore Wellingtons.
No. Well, he would have worn boots.
No, yes, but not Wellington boots. Well, Wellington's boots.
Yeah.
Yes, him and the Earl of Sandwich getting there.
What does George want?
He wants 200-year-old stinking underpants that
Yes.
are festered.
which should be the easiest thing for Baldric to produce.
Well, he immediately examines his own, which we know from past stories are likely to meet the description.
And so confident that he can produce the goods, Blackadder waves goodbye to his guests and steps into the time machine, and we see Baldric arrive via a trapdoor underneath.
Yeah, and I think Blackadder is quite impressed with the interior of this machine. Baldric's done a bit of work on it.
Yes, he admits that he followed Da Vinci's instructions to the letter, despite not being able to read.
Yes. They play around with the controls a little bit and then they go to leave. I think Blackadder explained to the others that it would seem like no time at all had passed for them because the machine would return exactly the moment it left.
Yeah, so after pulling these levers and pushing buttons, etc., lights come on, there's a flash, and after a moment, Blackadder opens the door and finds that things have not went according to his plan.
Certainly not. They have actually travelled in time. Back to some kind of prehistoric era. I'm not going to guess which one it is.
Yeah, the dinosaur era. I'm sure that was a
Jurassic
Park.
Yeah. Anyway, yes, there's a dinosaur there, and they are forced to use these objects they'd collected to win the bet to fend off the dinosaur.
Yeah, well, the first one would be simple enough. How do they fend off this T-Rex?
Well, I think the first thing they tried was the helmet, wasn't it? And it bounced off him, and then it turns out to be the underpants, which inadvertently lead to the extinction of the dinosaurs.
Yeah, that wouldn't happen, would it? One dies, they don't all become extinct.
Well, I don't know. They might.
I suppose if
it's introduced bacteria that weren't present at that time.
Yeah, and if the pants would be lying around there.
Yeah, they've got no immunity to it. They would all be wiped out.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Unfortunately, Baldric didn't get around to writing numbers on the dials on the inside of the machine as the instructions required, and it just looks like puggy symbols.
Yes.
Slot machine, we should maybe say for the non-Scottish members of the audience.
However, Blackadder thinks that by returning the knobs and levers to the position that they had previously been in, this will take them home as long as they can remember.
Yeah, he takes the time to acknowledge that by building a working time machine, Baldric is the greatest genius who has ever lived, but quickly points out that the omission of the numbers is more of a return to form.
Yeah. In any case, they head off from prehistoric times and arrive back at Blackadder Mansion.
It does appear to be the same room that they left, but there's nobody there.
No, so he walks through to the dining room.
Which is no longer the dining room.
Nope, he has a bit of a shock. Who is there?
Queen Elizabeth I of England.
Along with?
Melchett.
And?
I think Nursey was there.
She is.
Yeah.
The Queen's holding court and notes that he is wearing odd clothes.
Yes, Nursey doesn't seem to have aged at all.
No, neither does Miranda Richardson.
No.
Because there is a nice little in-joke here where she says that he's looking old and ugly.
Yes.
But the rest of them, I think, do.
They look older. Yes, Melchett Stephen Fry looks older.
Yeah.
Hugh Laurie never ages.
But Miranda Richardson looks, maybe it's makeup, or maybe she's just...
That's a bit hard, maybe it's makeup.
Well, she
just naturally youthful good looks.
Could be.
Melchett is outraged by the cheek of Blackadder as always and recommends his execution as always.
And as always, the Queen is quite happy to agree to this. A bit of choppy.
Yeah. The Queen says this is fine unless Blackadder has a gift for her.
This is very reminiscent of the Walter Raleigh episode.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, it leads to the worst sequence of the episode where Blackadder tries to explain a Tesco club card.
Yeah, not even a credit card now. Back in the 80s, Rowan Atkinson played a James Bond or a Johnny English type, and he advertised MasterCard. Don't know if you remember that. Yeah, so I was thinking maybe there'd be a tie-in there, but no, it's Tesco club card.
It's disappointing. It makes you think, were Tesco a sponsor of the Millennium Dome?
I think they must have been, because you wouldn't have pulled out... The club card wouldn't have been the first example. A credit card on its own.
Yeah. Maybe they couldn't think of any jokes and they liked this half-price beans thing.
Yeah.
But no.
So she orders him to be taken away. But in the struggle, he drops an open packet of Polo Mints.
She wants one. Seeing this, she tries it. She loves it.
She does.
And exchanges the rest of the packet for a crown.
Yeah, I mean, she is delighted that Melchett would no longer smell like a turd in the morning.
That's good. Bit much information, but it's good. She says to Blackadder he should return with more mints or she will crush his skull like an egg.
Yeah.
Fair enough. He agrees to that.
Yeah, because he knows he's off scale. So outside in the corridor, he is hurrying back to the time machine when he bangs into a young man carrying a manuscript.
Yes, it turns out to be a very familiar face to William Shakespeare.
He is holding a copy of Macbeth, which is knocked to the ground.
Yes, by Blackadder. And Blackadder is initially civil, but things then take a turn.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at first Shakespeare apologises for the two gentlemen of Verona and promises this new work is much better.
Yes. It reminds me about, I think there was a Doctor Who episode when they met Shakespeare and he was trying to make up for a bad play with a better one.
Seeing an opportunity, Blackadder gets him to sign a page of Macbeth before punching him and letting him know why.
That is for every schoolboy and schoolgirl for the next 400 years. Have you any idea how much suffering you're going to cause? Hours spent at school desks trying to find one joke in A Midsummer Night's Dream. Years wearing stupid tights in school plays and saying things like, "What ho, my lord," and "Oh, look, here comes Othello," talking total crap as usual. Oh, and... Ow! That is for Ken Branagh's endless, uncut 4-hour version of Hamlet.
Who's Ken Branagh?
I'll tell him you said that, and I think he'll be very hurt.
The note I've taken here is that after the punch, Blackadder goes on about this and ruins a good joke. Because all he had to say is that's for every schoolboy and schoolgirl for the next 400 years. Everyone knew what that meant. They didn't need to go in. Those next 3 or 4 lines were completely superfluous. Anyway, I like the Ken Branagh reference.
Yeah.
I wonder if, I presume he's a friend.
I think so. Part of the set.
It would be a bit harsh if they hated him and then they just put this in.
Yeah, well, we know that Emma Thompson was friends with Fry and Laurie.
Yeah.
And obviously, she was married to him.
Yep. They were in Harry Potter together as well.
Are they?
Not together, but they were both in it.
Okay. Back in this time vehicle, and they try again with the levers and set off.
Blackadder is adamant that if they survive this, he's going to kill Baldric. They move the levers entirely in the opposite direction, and it turns out to be a step too far.
Yeah, they end up in the middle of a sort of Star Wars-looking fight.
Space battle, yeah.
Yeah.
That's where the special effects budget went. They don't stay for long.
No. Where do they end up landing?
Sherwood Forest.
But Blackadder thinks that the empty wood is safe. No danger here at all.
Yes, he's quite happy. But they're caught in a trap by a familiar-looking Robin Hood.
Yes, they are firstly hauled up by a large net and are surrounded by numerous men with bows and arrows.
Absolutely.
Tell me about
Merry men.
Yeah, tell me about their leader.
Well, it's some sort of Robin Hood and Lord Flashheart cross.
Yeah, he's not depicted in the traditional way, is he?
No, he's a bit more flash, you would say. And he's got a bit of swagger about him, as you would expect. He cuts them down from this trap.
Yeah, he seems to know who Blackadder is.
He certainly has an idea. He maybe knows who the Blackadder of the time is and assumes this is the same person.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Robin does seem to be a raging homophobe.
That is very unfortunate, and it does go along with some of the stuff we've seen in Blackadder in the past.
Yeah. But he does introduce some of his men to Blackadder and Baldric, and also a lovely maid Marion.
Yes, it's Kate Moss.
It is.
A young Kate Moss.
Not that young.
Well,
Younger.
she is
Kate,
now.
Yes, of course. But Kate Moss was famous when she was 14.
Yes.
So this is a mid...
Peak Kate Moss.
I would say that, yeah. Peak Kate Moss.
It's a good choice. I think they said somewhere that they went for the most attractive person they could think of, and she accepted, so they were delighted. I think they missed a trick.
Why?
Well, Tony Roberts at this point is very famous for Marion and her Merry Men. They could have had a crossover.
Yeah, they could have.
Anyway.
Doesn't have the star quality, however.
I suppose. It would have been maybe an in-joke too far.
Yeah.
Blackadder, in his style, exposes the flaws in Robin Hood's entire approach to life and robbery.
Yeah, tell us about this.
Well, it's a fairly logical deconstruction. He takes from the rich and he gives to the poor, and he and his men stay poor and live a life of poverty despite massive sums of money passing through their hands.
Now, you say it's fairly logical, Ian. I would argue that is a type of argument that the right wing might have about social security and benefits. It's a type of right-wing nonsense here, isn't it? If you give them money, they'll just become lazy layabouts and laugh at you and take it and not want to work.
Oh, no, absolutely it is. But it's persuasive to these young men who feel like they are missing out personally. Because they're poor, but they never get given any of the money. So Robin calls for the men to shoot Blackadder, and they look like they're about to comply. They prepare their bows, they pull back, they release, but their target is not the intended one from Robin's point of view.
No, he finds himself pinned to a tree.
Dead. Imminently dead.
Yeah, I didn't realise at the time that he was dead, because I think he was still moving.
They refer to it later that he was killed, yeah.
Yeah, perhaps they don't kill him with the arrows, but they secure him with the arrows and then slit his throat.
Perhaps something gruesome. Disembowel him or something along those lines. It's very unfortunate for him. But Blackadder takes advantage, and he and Baldric escape back to the time machine.
Yeah, but before they arrive at the time machine, we see Blackadder head off for a little wander with the lovely Maid Marian.
Yes, and he and Baldric refer, once they return to the machine, to their own little dalliances. Blackadder with Marian and Baldric with Will Scarlet, and the joke here appears to be, he's gay.
Yeah, we'll move on.
Yeah. Blackadder expresses some degree of concern that they're influencing history too much.
Yeah, and decide they need to get back ASAP. However, to their own time, they do not return. Where do they end up next?
Well, I think they're on their way to Waterloo. We don't see them immediately, but it is the fields of Waterloo.
Yeah, we see a French darling update Napoleon on his military manoeuvres and has a question about the invasion itself.
My Lord Emperor, I, the Duke de Darling, bring news. The English have reached Waterloo. Good, prepare to attack. Very well. But first, I would like to ask, why do we want to invade Britain in the first place? I mean, their wine is made of the pee-pee of cows, and their women all have big beards. We invade, darling, because the British think they are so tough. They think we French are sissies. They call us weeds and whoopsies and big girls' blouses. With respect, my emperor, we are whoopsies. We invented the tapestry, the souffle, and the sweet liqueur. We will be slaughtered the minute we mince up the hill. Do not despair. It is my firm belief that God hates the British. He will intervene miraculously and send us a glorious victory on this field of Waterloo. Oh, bravo! A lovely uniform today, by the way. Oh, thank you. I think it works.
This is obviously a little bit of a nod back to the Scarlet Pimpernel.
Indeed.
Blackadder the Third.
The Pimpernel Scarlet. Good episode.
It was.
Over on the British side, Wellington tells Darling that he has a plan to destroy the French, and it can't fail.
Yes, it's a brilliant plan that nobody else could think of, and he's about to announce exactly what that will be.
He is, but what happens?
The time machine arrives, lands on him and kills him.
Yes, much like the Wicked Witch of the East.
Yes, that was unfortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first person that Dorothy murdered.
Just the first, yeah.
First of multiple.
Many.
Blackadder and Baldric beat a hasty retreat at this stage, but not before stealing Wellington's.
Just like the Wicked Witch. They grab her shoes.
Exactly, they're not in Kansas anymore.
No, they're not. Next port of call.
Well, they press a button which reveals a Postman Pat toy, I think,
Okay.
or image anyway. But they end up in Roman times, which is where our opening clip came from.
Yeah, Baldric looks out and tells Blackadder that he can see people in very short skirts. And Blackadder perks up at this.
Yes, he thinks maybe they're back.
Yeah, 60s London.
Yes, or certainly close to back. But no, it is indeed Roman times at the Hadrian's Wall.
So, seeing an opportunity, they decide to try and nick one of the Romans' helmets.
Seeing as they're there.
Yeah. See, this is the thing. I'd be thinking, okay, that bet was fine when it was a con, but I am now messing about with a time machine. I'm just going to try and go home.
I could actually be killed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, we kind of segue to a Roman Blackadder and a Roman Baldric.
Yes. They are talking about the Scots as they stand on the wall and lament that their leader has decided that the best way to keep out the vast army of lunatics is to build a 3-foot high wall.
It'll never work.
Have you been to Hadrian's Wall before?
Parts of it.
Yeah, of course, parts of it.
I've not walked the whole.
No, I didn't ask that.
Yeah.
If I said to you, have you been to the Great Wall of China? You wouldn't say, yeah, the parts of it. I'm not.
I would say I've walked along it, and I'm now a fitness guru.
Yeah, it's very unimpressive.
The Great Wall of China.
No, well, that as well. I've heard. I've not been there, but yeah.
It's a wall. How impressive can a wall be?
No, Hadrian's Wall. I was there as a kid, and I thought, it's all right.
I think I took a school trip to Vindolanda, and I've been to other parts since.
I do love a Vindolanda. Very hot, as long as you and spicy. Nice with a bit of chapati. The more optimistic Georgius bounds over and thinks that this 3-foot wall's a fine plan, as their pant-wearing general arrives on the scene to inform them what?
The troops are being withdrawn from Britain.
Yes, the Empire is being attacked on all sides, the Roman Empire that is, and as such they have all to retreat back to Rome. Do you like what Melchett does here?
Yeah, a little bit of a catchphrase there.
Yeah, you've got a bit of a ba-us.
The Scots attack at this stage.
Yeah, Georgius notices a large orange head, I think we heard that at the top of the podcast, moving towards him, and it's pointed out that it's in fact not a hedge.
Yeah, no. Georgius has kind of got the attitude of George from Blackadder Goes Forth.
He does indeed.
I think that's obviously what he's...
Very naive.
Yes, absolutely.
So deciding this to be an opportune time to get out, Blackadder and Baldric grab the helmet and run to the time machine and escape just in time.
Just in the nick of time.
Mm-hmm. So back in the time machine, Baldric is moaning that they are doomed to roam time forever until Blackadder spots a lever that they haven't tried yet.
It's not a lever.
No, what is it?
Baldric left a lollipop stuck in the controls. But at this, Baldric comes up with a genius plan.
Yeah, it's very cunning. But neither of them have high expectations. But it does turn out to be a good plan. Tell me about it.
Okay. Baldric's initial suggestion is that Blackadder should induce near death for himself so that he can have his life flash before his eyes and see where the levers were.
Yes. And as you can expect, Blackadder thinks it's a fine plan with just one slight modification.
That's it. Next time, we see Baldric with his head in the water, drowning.
Yes, he's been punched and is being dunked. It's an odd interpretation of how this concept works. So they dunk him a little bit and he explains what time he's at in his life.
Yes.
So he's not far enough forward yet, so he dunks him some more.
This is genuinely good stuff. I like this is one of my favourite scenes where the comedy is something that's a little sort of, a bit funny. But
yeah.
not the word. The funny's the wrong word. A bit witty. It's something new. They're not just recycling an old joke or putting new people in the same situation.
Yeah, I agree. I think the two times we hear Baldric, one is when he's 18 and at nursery and or leaving nursery, and the second time is he's 25 and he's returned to nursery.
Yes. He struggled with education.
Anyway, the plan works, although Baldric does rue not flushing the toilet first. And as they head back, philosophical Baldric asks Blackadder what he thinks they have learned on their great journey.
Good question, Baldric. I suppose I've learned that I must buy you a much stronger mouthwash for Christmas this year. How about you?
Oh, I don't know. I suppose I've learned that human beings have always been the same. Some nice, some nasty, some clever, some stupid. There's always a Blackadder and there's always a Baldric.
Yes, very profound, Baldric.
Also, it occurs to me,
Oh, God, there's not more, is there?
if you're in the right place at the right time, then every person has the power to go out and change the world for the better.
God, you really are as thick as clotted cream that's been left out by some clot until the clots are so clotted up you couldn't unclot them with an electric declotter. Aren't you, Baldric? Real change comes from huge socio-economic things that individuals have no effect on.
Unless you're king or prime minister or something.
Well, yes, I suppose they can make a difference. But for the rest of us, all we can do in life is to try to make a bit of cash.
The return to the 21st century, or the very end of the 20th century, or we're not going to debate exactly when the 21st century began, but in any event, where they began.
Yeah, and Blackadder intends making this cash as soon as possible. I should say that you mentioned earlier, the whole clotted scene there, it was okay. It was nice. It was a nod back to the previous series, but it was very much by numbers.
It's like a tribute act, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think that's a very good description of this episode. I think you can see what they're trying to do. It sounds like Blackadder, it looks like Blackadder. It's enjoyable enough, but there's just something...
Yeah. Anyway, their present day return is not as comfortable as they maybe anticipated.
No. So he returns and the awaiting guests are there. As expected, they are sceptical and yet seem convinced that he has indeed travelled through time when he empties his bag of generic items on the table. I mean, that's not going to impress anyone, is it? A pair of old boots and a helmet. You could have bought that anywhere.
Absolutely. And in fact, they almost certainly weren't genuine artefacts that they used.
Almost certainly, you think, yeah? Yeah. Okay. Now, Melchett asks at this point if he had been careful not to do anything to change history, which Blackadder assures him he has, or hasn't.
He's been very careful. But it turns out that these people have never heard of either Robin Hood or Shakespeare.
Well, I've heard of Shakespeare, but it was for inventing the ballpoint pen.
Yes, that's right.
He is a little worried to discover that these two things are not so famous now, but he shrugs it off as George hands over his winnings of what?
Francs.
Yeah, 10,000 francs.
They've not used pounds since Napoleon won the Battle of Waterloo.
Yeah, I thought that was very heavy-handed.
He didn't even need to say that. They used to get paid in francs. Anyhow, they're off to watch the president's speech. So not only has he got rid of Hood and changed Shakespeare, he's also ended the monarchy.
Yeah, where's the president's speech being broadcast from?
The Palace of Versailles.
Yeah. So why are they speaking English? That's what I want to know.
International language.
Yeah, but wouldn't have been
I don't know. Maybe they're not. Maybe it's just been translated for our ears.
Okay, Google Translate.
Magic. Yeah.
Right. Blackadder tells them that he needs to go on a final trip and turns down some delicious garlic pudding and a performance of ballet from Darling.
Oh no.
So back in the time machine, we see Baldric and Blackadder journeying back to the times that they had previously visited in order to put right the changes that they had made.
Yes. Make right what once went wrong.
Yeah, this is even more dangerous. You're now just doubling up on your mistake.
They've not heard of the butterfly effect.
No.
But they save Wellington. They save Robin Hood. They compliment Shakespeare. And they return home to find impressed friends and everything in its natural place.
Yes. The guests are now astounded at his signed copy of Macbeth.
Yes, they are. And they talk about how easily history could have been changed.
Mm-hmm. I think that was a nod to the fact that there is no such signature.
Right, okay. At this, Blackadder has a thought and sends the rest of the guests upstairs while he and Baldric make one additional trip.
Yeah, I think he got the inspiration from something that Melchett says. He talks about the how any tiny change could have huge repercussions, and to think what an unscrupulous person could do.
Yes, I think he self-identifies as unscrupulous.
Yeah, and as you said, a smirk appears in Blackadder's face, and he excuses himself for 5 seconds and tells them to go and watch the TV. He'll be back very soon. And in the time machine, Blackadder reveals to Baldric that he's other things on his mind.
Baldric, I have a very, very, very cunning plan.
Is it as cunning as a fox, what used to be Professor of Cunning at Oxford University, but has moved on and is now working for the UN at the High Commission of International Cunning Planning?
Yes, it is.
That's cunning.
That's obviously a direct reference back to the cunning fox line.
Yeah, I don't mind that as much.
That's fine, yeah. Upstairs, the others watch on television as King Edmund III and Queen Marion are received at the Millennium Dome.
Yes. And with him is Prime Minister Baldric, who is in his 3rd term.
I thought he said 5th term.
Was it 5th?
5th term as Prime Minister, and he's very close to Blackadder after the dissolution of Parliament 2 years ago.
That's very generous of Blackadder. There's certainly some incarnations of Blackadder who would not have provided Baldric with such a gift.
Yeah, he's kept him as his right-hand man.
Yeah.
It's a nice little song in the closing credits as well.
There is, but before we get there, they both turn to camera and give a little nod and a wink.
Yes, and you can see Baldrick's not quite dressed to the job, is he?
No. What did you like about the song?
I just thought it was nice that they brought the traditional Blackadder II tune up to date with some more contemporary lyrics, none of which particularly stood out, but on the whole, it was nice.
Yeah. And there we have it. It's strange to think that it's been, 18, 19 years since this episode was first broadcast, which is considerably longer than the difference between then and Blackadder 1.
Jeez, yes. Yeah, you're right. So 18 years ago. Remarkable.
I think we discussed briefly at the top of the podcast. It was an enjoyable episode, but I found it a bit lightweight and it felt very rushed. Blackadder jumped into a scene, jumped back out of a scene.
Yeah, I think we mentioned earlier that they'd already done this in the Christmas Carol. I think that was a better format for it as well. You've got the ghosts, you've got 3 of them. It was a longer episode. Mm-hmm. But I think you also have to bear in mind that this was done for a purpose.
Of course, it was commissioned for a very specific reason.
Nobody else would do it. No. They needed something big to headline the ultimately failed Millennium Dome project.
Yeah. Okay, well, do you have any trivia about that?
Not about the Millennium Dome, but I've got some trivia about the background to the episode.
Okay, well, we can chat about that in a second. The 6th of December 1999 was the original air date for this.
I think it showed on a cinema at the Millennium Dome. I mean, it's famously the biggest white elephant in British history. And they needed to make some of their money back because they'd invested millions building this ridiculous structure in the middle of nowhere. I think it did the job to an extent, but there's only so much you can do with one 30-minute TV show.
33 minutes.
Oh, sorry.
Do you know that for the whole of 2000, this episode was played 8 times per day, every day, in the Millennium Dome?
I think there was accompanying attractions as well. There were,
of course,
photograph opportunities and...
But even for the most ardent of fans, if you worked in that place and you had to listen to the same track over and over again for a year...
Yeah, I know, that would be difficult.
It would be torturous. Anyway, this episode was directed by Paul Whelan, born in 1953. He has also directed Maid of Honour, 6 episodes of Mr. Bean, City Slickers 2, Leonard Part 6, which was a Razzie nomination, or he'd received a Razzie nomination for his directorial role. It starred Bill Cosby.
Moving on.
He actually said he really didn't like Bill Cosby, thought he was very unfunny, certainly in this movie, but because of the power of Cosby, I think this is back in the late 80s, early 90s, because of his power and influence, he couldn't tell him he was a star, but he thought he was dreadful. On the flip side, Paul Whelan has had 2 BAFTA nominations for this, and a short called Keep Off the Grass, which had a very young Hugh Laurie in.
Okay.
Back in 1983. And he was also awarded an OBE in 2015. There are a few guest stars. We've mentioned Kate Moss. We all know who Kate Moss is, the supermodel, and rock star hang-abouterer.
Okay.
So we'll simply chat about Colin Firth, who played Will Shakespeare. Born in 1960, we all know who he is as well. Most famous these days, I don't know, what for the King's Speech, where he won an Oscar and a BAFTA. A Single Man, where he was Oscar nominated and had a BAFTA win. Pride and Prejudice, Bridget Jones's Diary, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, Kingsman, Mamma Mia, Nanny McPhee, Love Actually, and Fever Pitch.
Ubiquitous, you might say, these days.
He's the father to his son William with his ex, who's Meg Tilly.
Okay.
Famous Hollywood actress and sister of Jennifer Tilly. He's got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and a CBE was awarded to him in 2001.
So already very famous at the time he appears in this.
Yeah. Favourite line?
Ooh, that's a good shout. Let me have a think. Hang on.
You're always thinking, I've mentioned mine earlier, it was the ba-us.
I quite like the reference to Ken Branagh with Shakespeare.
Okay, any other trivia for us?
Well, I've got extensive notes on the background to the show. I don't know how much of it's worth mentioning, but
give us a bit.
The Cliff Notes version is that the original approach for this was made to John Lloyd, obviously famously produced the series, and he had found Ben Elton and Richard Curtis either unavailable or disinterested, so he was planning to do the show with new writers. But his version of events is that when Elton and Curtis found out about this, they kind of did an end around, cut him out of it altogether. And his view is they were very much, let's get rid of John, he's annoying, and he was very hurt and cross about it, but bit his tongue. Tony Robinson actually comments on that, and he says that everyone was off doing wildly different things, and they were kind of pulled together, and it was difficult because not everyone was available at the same time. He was off doing bits of Time Team, and John Lloyd maybe wasn't available, but I don't think that's how Lloyd viewed it.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. You can understand all the stars have been very successful post Blackadder.
Yeah.
And you can imagine that getting them all together and getting a script that they're all happy with, etc., would have been difficult. So I'm sure there's two sides to every story, but there's always a grain of truth in these things. It just depends on how you view it.
In terms of the episode itself, Lloyd thinks it is very professionally produced, but doesn't have the Blackadder spirit. And Rowan Atkinson has said that in his personal view, it's the least successful half hour of Blackadder that was ever made.
That is quite a strong opinion. I'm sure not everyone would agree, but I do agree with John Lloyd that it didn't have the same spirit, I think. Yeah,
although I think he was trying to say that's because they didn't let him do it.
But that may well be the case. I mean, he's the producer. He is I suppose he's the manager of it all.
Yeah, I mean, this might be a particularly touchy episode in these terms, but we heard about this all through the production of Blackadder 3, Blackadder 4, that there was shenanigans behind the scenes. Folk didn't get on, folk were changing things, folk were unhappy. So perhaps it was inevitable.
Yeah. And like I said there, it's an odd situation. There are, maybe 4 or 5 big egos, big stars in this. Normally in a sitcom you'll have the one or two of the stars, the rest are supporting. But everyone here is no one's going to back down. Everyone, I suppose, has an ego.
Yeah. And they all think that they are a key contributor.
Yeah, well, they're all very talented, and they're all writers themselves and performers, so it would be difficult, I think, to manage that group of people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's probably why we're not going to see anymore.
Yeah, and I'm not disappointed.
No, it's fine. It finished fine with Blackadder Goes Forth. And let it be. Although I am quite sad that Rowan Atkinson is better known for Mr. Bean, which isn't anything like as good.
Of course not, no.
I don't want to. It's not the Mr. Bean podcast, but
coming next.
That would be epic, wouldn't it?
Talking about what we're doing next time. I mean, this is obviously the final episode proper of the Blackadder podcast. I think we should come back next week, wrap things up, and say our goodbyes and let people know what, if anything, we're up to next and when.
Yes, and take our revenge.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
No. That'll be fine.
Yeah. Okay, so until the wrap-up episode next time.
Yeah, cheerio.
Bye-bye.